let's get to it. We got less than 10 minutes. I want to make sure, hopefully, you can get out of here on time or ahead of time. Um, oh, all right. So, welcome to the archive, Kevin Eastman. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks. Happy to be here. This is fun. It's a 40th anniversary of the Turtles, and I can't believe after 40 years I still get to hang out with nice people like you and talk about the fact that we're still here. And I still get the greatest job ever, and I still get to do it every day.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, you get to come up with whatever comes into your imagination. You put it down on paper, and then people get to enjoy it. And funny enough, it started out as something that you kind of drew jokingly as like Bruce Lee as a turtle, and now it's like an international sensation. It's everywhere. People still to this day enjoy it 40 years later.
Yeah, it's like that. It's um, really amazing, and that is quite mind blowing. And I use the word humbling a lot because it's one of those things that came from a lifelong history of love and passion for comic books and telling stories, words, and pictures, and as comic book stories. And so when Peter and I came up with the idea, it was out of banter and goofiness and coming up with something that we thought was fun because we didn't think anybody would read it or buy it or there would be a second issue. And the fact that it's gone on to become that it has become, it really is. It's very mysterious, and I again will use the word humbling because it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Now, do you think part of not just like the goofiness, like, oh, hey, we're going to make something that we think is goofy and funny, do you think also that you kind of took the route that you took, making something that you and some other people have described as middle of the road or kind of like in the middle, not adult comic and not necessarily DC?
Most definitely, I think it's not only so many of the isms. It really started off as a parody, if you will. So we took sort of, not sort of, we directly took so many of the things that we loved about comic books in general, not only the genre itself, the stereotypes, the kinds of characters that are portrayed in them, the like the Fantastic Four, you get the multiple personalities of a family that then, come together to solve a thing. So there's a lot of familiar genre-based things in it. And then because it wasn't Comics Code approved, Marvel or DC comic books that they were at the time, and it wasn't underground comic books. It was something in the middle of the road that was falling in behind, say, Wendy and Richard Pini with ElfQuest, Dave Sim with Cerebus, other things that were right kind of ground level, I guess. And I think that sort of we get to put a foot in each world.
Yeah, and I think that's really unique. It's funny because I was introduced to it through like the TV show as a little kid, and it's these silly heroes that seem kind of cool, but they're also geeky. But reading the comic book, there's like a huge degree of violence to it that you don't really get to see anywhere else, and it made it very interesting. Was that shocking to a lot of people?
Well, yeah, it's what's interesting is, your case in specific. I've heard that story many, many times, and I love it. And for the reason of, the comic book at the height of its success was probably 100,000 copies, which is phenomenal as a comic book. And the fans were the original material is intended for. We wrote it for ourselves. It was written for an older audience. We didn't have like heads being lopped off and spinning into but it was very violent. It was very martial arts based and intense storytelling and action. When the cartoon came out, and suddenly millions of people are seeing it as much more of a kid-friendly thing, which we worked on and wrote it down for a younger audience with the whole team, the animation team. And so sometimes when people would introduce it to the cartoon show and then were growing out of it, they would discover the black and white comic books, and it would sort of, Michael Corleone, it pulled me back in again. It's sort of, they go, oh, I can still read it. It's in, this version's for an older audience. So, we grabbed you and we kept you.
Yeah, definitely. Now, could you help paint a picture to what the comic book industry was like? It's changed a lot since you started, but what was it like getting your foot in the door? And then as an independent, what was the process like having to produce your own comics?
We were very lucky in the time that we came into comics because comics before, say, the mid 60s ish were solely and specifically newsstand comics. So it was Marvel, DC, Gold Key, Charlton, the big companies that would corporate companies that would roll it out and they'd put them in every drugstore, corner store and stuff like that. And then you had this evolution of comic stores evolve, and this creation of what they call the direct market distribution system, which was taking underground comic books and magazines and different things and distributing them non-returnable to what they called it would be sort of a comic book slash smoke shop slash it was the alternate drugstore, if you will.
The alternate drugstore.
The alternate drugstore at the corner of a different city streets. But this created a system of these comic book stores, direct market comic stores, which there was when we started, it was probably 7 or 8,000 of them across the U.S. And so we were able to solicit through a series of distributors directly to those shops because there was no alternative. We couldn't afford to do newsstand. There was no internet. There was no advertising. There was no. You had word of mouth and people that would hunt them down in different comic stores or secondhand bookstores. I used to buy a lot of my old comic books from Salvation Army, where some poor guy, his mom threw away all his comic books and donated them to the Salvation Army. So that was where we started, and it was word of mouth. And we're lucky that system existed, that we were able to establish an audience base across the country, and start selling and be able to continue to grow as that industry grew. So it was quite archaic, but that was the system, and we were grateful for it at the time, for sure.
Yeah. Now to help kind of wrap this all up, do you have anything you'd like to say to future generations?
Man, it all comes down to the same place. And sort of when I look at the kinds of genres, or it's like my son, for example, our son, he doesn't read comic books, but he loves the Marvel Cinematic Universe, if you will. He loves things that he didn't know were comic book based movies that he loved evolved from comic books. I love that there's a lot of video games and cross section of things that can are distractions, but they're also very creative in their own right, and they all sort of can be wrapped up into sort of this genre based stuff, much like you describe a say comic book convention, which I call the happiest place on earth for most people, where you can go to one location and celebrate the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Doctor Who, Star Trek, Star Wars, DC, Superman, Batman, Turtles, and it's a manga. Oh my goodness, such fantastic stuff. So it's find what you like, love what you like. If you want to be part of this business, if you want to work towards it, if you want to be a writer, an artist, like anything, work hard at it, like you would a musician or an athlete. But come hang out and have fun, and it's a great medium to be creative and really find the things that you like about it, and find your space and your place and other people with like minds, and certainly at comic conventions and hang out and online as well. So yeah, it's a great time to be in this business.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Very much enjoyed talking to you, and hopefully we'll talk again.